Chapter 11. Worst case scenario, anyone? Dr. Leckman asked if Mark and I could meet him at his office that afternoon. Uh-oh. Something told me that my good news moments would not be continuing. All the years I had spent going over various worst case scenarios in my mind was finally catching up with me. Here we were, on day 26, smack dab in the middle of worst case scenario land. I was nervous the whole morning, but as the time for our appointment drew closer, my nervousness slowly disappeared and was replaced by a strange feeling of perfect calmness. In my heart, I knew that I would be receiving some pretty bad news. So when this calm feeling washed over me, I was confused. I had been in so much agony thinking about the worst things imaginable. So why wasn't I continuing my freakout sessions? Why was I not a basket case of worry anymore? Apparently, God had other plans for me, and he placed me in a protective bubble. Any negative thoughts that tried to penetrate the thin, filmy surface of my bubble just bounced back into the universe. Excerpt from my journal. As this whole thing has progressed, I have never been able to pray for the easiest road. I have only been able to pray that I may be prepared to accept the test and the road that lies ahead. Today, I felt that preparation. End quote. At the appointment, Mark and I sat together hand in hand. Dr. Leckman sat across from us. His kind face smiled with compassion as he shared with us the news we had feared from the very beginning. During the lumpectomy surgery, Dr. Leckman discovered that the tumor was much bigger than even the MRI had shown. In fact, it wasn't really a solid mass of a tumor at all. It was more like a spider web creeping about all over the place, and the pathology report told us that there was cancer present in the lymph nodes that were removed. For a moment, my mind went numb as I listened to him share the information with us. I was waiting for the fear to grab hold of my heart, but it never came. There were angels present in that room that day. I know it. I felt it. My Grandpa Holt, my Uncle Ray, and other relatives were there holding me together. The Spirit of the Lord was also there helping my mind to stay open and free from negative thoughts so that I could soak in and comprehend all the information the doctor was sharing with me. Dr. Leckman told us that he had set up an appointment for the next afternoon with Dr. Shandamoli, an oncologist with the Utah Cancer Specialists. We thanked him for taking such good care of me and for attending to all the little details. He must have sensed the apprehension that continued to plague my aura, so he kindly took a moment to share his educated opinion of what might happen next. He said that I would most definitely need to have a mastectomy, since my tumor was not a solid mass, but rather a tumor with wispy tentacles. We couldn't be sure that the lumpectomy took care of the entire tumor that was twisting and winding around my breast tissue. I would have the choice between a unilateral, just the remainder of my right breast, or a bilateral, both breasts, mastectomy. He also said that I had a couple of other factors that would probably push me into chemotherapy and radiation land. The first factor was my age. I was only 33 years old, which is young to be diagnosed with breast cancer. When someone my age does end up with cancer, it usually is a very aggressive cancer. That meant that whatever treatment options we discussed would need to be very aggressive so that we could fight fire with fire. The second factor was the fact that the cancer was present in my lymph nodes, which meant there was a high possibility of it being somewhere else in my body. Mark and I walked to the car in silence, trying to process all the information we had just received. My heart was hurting just thinking about the conversation I would have to have with my children. The road we were about to travel was going to be a very difficult road for everyone in our family. I thought, and Mark agreed, that it would be better to wait until after we met with the oncologist before we talked to the kids about everything that was going on. That way, they would know the actual plan instead of our speculated one. On day 27, I met my oncologist for the first time. Wow, I actually have an oncologist. How did that happen? Up to that point in my journey, I had been blessed with amazing doctors. Could that trend possibly continue? Would I love him and feel confident in his care? Or would I hate him and have to hurry and find someone else? That would have been awful because finding a new doctor would have meant more waiting. Oh, I hope that this doctor will be just as amazing as my other doctors, I said in my mind. From the moment Dr. Chandramoli sauntered into the room, I knew that we were in the right place. He shook our hands, and I immediately felt comfortable in his presence. It was another tender mercy. Dr. C reviewed all the things that we had gone over with Dr. Leckman. Then he got down to the nitty-gritty, the stage of my cancer, and my treatment options. Excerpt from my journal. He pretty much confirmed the fact that this is bad. He defined it as stage 3B breast cancer, which freaked me out a lot. End quote. Stage 3. How in the world did we go from it's probably just a fibroid to stage 3 breast cancer? To say that I was stunned would be a huge understatement. Here's the definition of stage 3 breast cancer from the National Breast Cancer Foundation's website. Stage 3 cancer means that the breast cancer has extended to beyond the immediate region of the tumor and may have invaded nearby lymph nodes and muscles, but has not spread to distant organs. Although this stage is considered to be advanced, there are a growing number of effective treatment options. This stage is divided into 3 groups: stage 3A, 3B, and 3C. The difference is determined by the size of the tumor and whether the cancer has spread to the lymph nodes and surrounding tissue. It was at that point in the conversation that Dr. Chandramouli had to take a step out of the room for a few moments. After he left, I looked at Mark, and neither of us could contain the tears any longer. We were in shock. To hear the words stage 3 cancer took the wind right out of our sails. We were both familiar enough with cancer stages to know that there was only one more stage after stage 3, and then you're gone. We only had a few moments to gather our composure before the doctor came back in so we could discuss my treatment options. I've always been somewhat of an overachiever. I like to go the second mile, like the primary song suggests. But goodness gracious, did I really have to carry that over into every aspect of my life? This was not just going to be a simple surgery and move on with your life kind of a deal. Nope. I was going to feast on the all-you-can-eat buffet of breast cancer treatments, sampling a little bit of everything, if you will. Course number 1 would include 2 tests, an EKG, or electrocardiogram, and a PET scan. I needed to have an EKG because one of the chemo meds I would need was known for causing heart problems later on down the road. My doctor wanted to have a baseline EKG just in case the drug decided to wreak havoc on my heart. I also needed to have a PET scan so we would know if the cancer was lurking anywhere else in my body. For course number 2, I would need to have another outpatient surgery to have a portacath placed under my skin, just below my collarbone, commonly known as a port. This small medical appliance would have a catheter attached to it that would feed directly into a vein in my neck. That way, when I went in for my chemo treatments, I would not have to get an IV every time. The nurses could access my port and administer the drugs through it, saving the veins in my arms. During course number 3 of my smorgasbord, I would begin chemo treatments. That would happen after I had recovered from my lumpectomy and port surgeries. My first chemo drugs would be a concoction affectionately known as the Red Devil. Its official name is adriamycin cytoxin. Say that fast 5 times. I would come to find out that it indeed does live up to its name, but more on those good times later. After finishing 4 rounds of the AC chemo, I would have another PET scan to see if the chemo was working. Then I would begin my second chemo drug, Taxotere. That one would not be as horrific as the AC, but it would pack a powerful punch of side effects nonetheless. For course number 4, we would move on to the mastectomy portion of my treatment schedule. As I mentioned before, I would have to choose between losing one breast or both breasts. In some respects, it would have been easier to have the gene test come back positive because then it wouldn't have been a choice. They would have said that both breasts have to go. As it was, I had a huge decision to make, and it took many hours of pondering, fasting, and praying to determine which one to choose. To round out the meal for course number 5, I would need to have 25 radiation treatments followed by reconstructive surgery, if I did in fact choose to have reconstruction. Check please, and I won't be leaving a tip. Excerpt from my journal. Welcome to hell. I read an article where the author said that we will have times in our lives where we will want to beg the Father to let this cup pass. This is definitely that time for me. I know that I can do this. I just don't want to do this. I'm scared to find out what turns up on the PET scan. I can deal with this in my lymph nodes and breast. I can even deal with it if it is spread a little. But please, oh please, don't let it be in my brain or liver. Please let me have a chance to fight this. I try not to worry about dying, but the past 2 days have been hard. It is way more serious than anyone anticipated. I'm not going to give up. I will fight this until the bitter end for sure. It's just turning out to be a harder battle than I thought it was going to be. I hope I have the strength to get through it. End quote. We left the doctor's office that day with a growing sense of dread settling deep into our bones. Now we had to face the unpleasant task of filling the kiddos in on what the next few months of our lives would entail. After dinner that night, we gathered everyone together in the living room. I don't remember my exact words, but I can vividly see the image of their faces in my mind. They displayed looks of shock, terror, fear, and sadness. They took the news as well as could be expected, and we all shed our fair number of tears. Because Josh and Emma were older, their tears came from a limited understanding of the severity of the situation. Abby and Ellie were crying mostly because everyone else was crying. At their tender ages, they did not understand the concept of cancer. However, they could feel the anxiety, fear, and sadness that invaded our happy home. It tore me up inside to be so brutally honest about the situation, but I knew that I could not sugarcoat things for them. I'm a talker. I like to talk about lots of things, and I knew that I would not be silent during this cancer journey. I did not want to share any information with a family member or friend that I had not already shared with my kids. They needed to hear everything from me, and I needed them to know that I was an open book. If they had a question or concern, they were to ask me right away. No letting things fester, no unnecessary worrying. We were in this fight together. I was the one who would be having the surgeries and treatments, but it was a battle that was going to affect all of us.